Football Tailgate. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, as we record this week's show. I'm Dan Watkins, joined as always by the great John McKechnie. John, here we go, right? Like, spring games are here. A lot of them have already happened. We got a few more coming up this weekend. Graduation season's right on the corner. We got the draft coming up. We got schedule noise popping out of all over the place, and we got starting quarterbacks being named. Like, it is just an exciting time in college football here as we get towards the end of April.
Yep, hope springs eternal. You can really go ahead and sell yourself on anything that you just saw in a spring game and be like, oh man, we're about to be rolling. With a guy that may catch 2 or 3 passes all season, but right now he's your MVP. So you can really convince yourself of anything that this time of year. But that's what it's for. You don't have to be worried about the accountability part of it. That's for 4 months from now. Just to be happy that your team has gotten through its spring practice, hopefully intact, hopefully got some news and nuggets out of it, hopefully some of your favorite recruits from this past cycle starting to pop a little bit, and that's all you need.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you ask for? And like you said, you can just say things right now this time of year, and you don't have to back anything up or have your team back anything up for another 4 to 5 months anyway. So yeah, a lot of excitement here. We got a lot planned for you guys on the show this week. Let's see. We are going to talk about some scheduling. I don't want to quite call it drama, but it seems like the ball is rolling here that the college football calendar might be changing in the coming years by a little bit. We might be shifting some things around here, so we're going to get to that. Starting quarterbacks, as I mentioned, have been named at some schools across the country where there were quarterback battles, as I put that in air quotes, whether you believe they truly were a battle or not. Penn State deep dive. Yeah, what are the expectations at State College this year in Happy Valley, right? The Matt Campbell era is about to begin. Like, what should Penn State fans be thinking? How are they feeling? We're going to dive into all of that. A little hint for you guys, if you like Iowa State football the past few years, I think you'll like Penn State football going forward here in 2026 because there's going to be a lot of familiarity there. As Matt Campbell basically brought, I don't know, the entire city of Ames or town of Ames, whichever, the community, the Ames community, has shifted from Iowa to Pennsylvania, basically, as we look at Penn State for 2026. And then we will dive into some of the latest stuff with the NFL draft at the end of the show here. We're pushing that towards the end, so if you're listening to this on Saturday or something like that, that back end of the draft stuff, you can just go either laugh at how wrong we were or whatever, but you get the picture. So anyways, before we do any of that, though, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button there in the bottom right corner on YouTube. We are College Football Tailgate on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Find us on any of those 3 platforms. Follow us on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25. Of course, we're on TikTok too, at CFB Tailgate, where there's a lot of fun. Also, hey, tell a friend. If you enjoy the show, right, tell a friend that needs a little college football content in their lifetime, in their lives. So just check us out. See what you like. All right, so John, we talked a lot, really, since the season ended about just how the college football calendar is just so screwed up, and it's just a total mess with everything. And obviously, it seems like playoff expansion is coming, but we still have a tight window to get these games in without pushing the season out even further. What is it? The 2026 season is going to come to an end on January 25th, 2027 is the national championship game for next season. It feels like that might have been the tipping point where it's okay, we cannot go into February. We really shouldn't even be going to the second half of January at this point. But that's what's going to happen here in 2026 into early parts of 2027. And now it seems like the ball's rolling here where we might be shifting some things around. And it seems like the NCAA has taken note and they have recommended to college football, hey, bump your season up a little bit. Right? So we normally have week 0 sometime mid to late August, where now the NCAA is strongly recommending, why not just make that week 1? Before I get into any more of the articles and stuff like that, Heather Dinich has a great write-up that we're going to pick from and cherry pick our way through. What are your thoughts on moving the season up to be just in general?
I think it's necessary. I think you look at the way the college football playoff unfolded last year. The product was pretty spectacular, I thought. But by that same token, was there any national juice for the national championship game? Obviously, we were excited about it. We host a college football podcast. Of course, we're going to be stoked about that game. It was sort of Oh yeah, yeah. There's like a college football game on of some import here, to sort of be a palate cleanser after my weekend of NFL playoff football. So it felt like the college football was sort of self sabotaging a little bit with just how drawn out the CFP has kind of come to be under this expanded era. And if they're going to look to expand further, which again, like you were alluding to, it sounds like that's very much in the realm of possibility in the not too distant future. You got to find a way to like get your wins where you can as far as the schedule goes, and try to move things up so it's not just so getting nuked by NFL playoffs. So an easy way of starting that without upsetting the whole Army Navy standalone game is moving the season up, making week 0 the new week 1. I think that makes plenty of sense. Obviously, it's going to be. I mean, most schools are like back in session by that time. It's going to be rough for those home games in the South. Like it's going to be like 100 some odd degrees in some spots. It's going to be crazy. But I think timing wise, it makes all the sense in the world to move the season up, especially if you're going to keep the sanctity of Army Navy in December. You probably are going to need to make some concessions elsewhere. Starting the season in August seems like a good start.
Yeah, and I think these calls and these chirps for this is going to get louder, and they're going to grow louder, especially this summer, because, well, one of the reasons why the national championship game is so late in January is because, well, Labor Day is the latest I believe it can be this year. It's like September 6th or 7th or something like that. So that means that we're not getting college football week 1 until like September 4th at this point. So by like mid-August, we're all like chomping at the bit, like, give us football, okay? Like, I can't watch much more regular season baseball. Like, I need something else. There's nothing else going on. Give us some college football, please. And like, we love those like couple of little week 0 games. Instead, let's get a full slate there in like mid to late August. And it sounds like that's what's going to happen. So Heather Dinich has a great write-up over on ESPN.com. I'm just going to read a little bit from this. But beginning in 2027, college football could have an earlier official start to the season as the NCAA's Football Oversight Committee recommends a standard start before Labor Day weekend. Under the proposal, the regular season would begin on the Thursday of what is now called Week 0 and still end on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Schools would have 14 weeks to schedule 12 games. This model would give teams 2 open dates and allow flexibility for potential changes to the postseason. That's significant, Dinich writes, as the leaders of the college football playoff continue to discuss how and when to expand the current 12-team field. The proposed calendar change would also preserve standalone weekends for conference championship games and the Army-Navy game. So, interesting here. It really seems like this is the direction that we're heading. I don't think we're going to really get too much pushback from anybody on bumping the season up a little bit. And I think it was even Dan Lanning who said that, I think it was going into last season. I was like, no, the ideal start would be we bump everything up a little bit here to give us a little bit of cushion at the back end.
So as a greedy man, so if week 0 now becomes week 1, can we still have a little like appetizer week? Would it be week -1? Can we still have that? Over in Ireland, it's not going to be that hot. Like you just send a Big 10 and a Big 12 team over there, like we had these last few years, and have it work out. So I still want a sort of like soft opening to this season, a la what week 0 has been giving us for years now, but while also moving things to what has been week 0. So basically, I'm opting for a shorter off season and more dang football come mid-August, because like you're saying, Dan, I'm not loving what I'm seeing from the Orioles. I think I'm ready to jump ship, certainly by the time that the calendar gets to August. So more football quicker, please.
Right. Yeah, I'm in the same boat with the Red Sox that are just an absolute disaster.
We're both in hell right now.
Exactly. So let's talk more football to just get that taste out of our mouths. But no, I was actually, you brought that up, and I think you are being a little greedy. I was reading like, no, if they do switch to this, everything's just going to kick off that weekend. But I did see, though, as I've started to like look at the schedule for this season, week 0 this year, I think we have like 8 games.
Oh,
that
okay.
weekend. Like we had like 5 last year, which felt like a lot, from the Ireland game all the way to that like late night Hawaii Stanford game that I remember us live tweeting. It seems like this year we got like a solid 8 games on the docket for that week 0 there in August. So you'll get a little more this year, but it looks like you're just gonna get a full slate in your face next year for week 0 with no appetizer.
Well, we'll be hungry by then, so I'm certainly good with it. But now that you mentioned week 0, now I'm like all excited again. But anyhow, I think I've covered all my points for the future reconfiguration of the season.
Very good. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. How this moves forward, as John was saying too. There's more rumblings about expansion. It feels like we're getting lawmakers involved now too, and anytime that happens, well, it seems like it's inevitable that something is going to change there with the college football playoff, as the Big Ten and the SEC still just kind of have their measuring contest of who has more pull in the college football playoff. But anyways, let's talk about expectations, and let's talk about, well, what to expect at Penn State in 2026 as the Matt Campbell era begins at State College. John, like this was like one of the most bizarre coaching searches in recent memory, right? They were the first opening. They fired James Franklin in the middle of the season. They end up going 7-6. Matt Campbell eventually hired as the head coach after they tried like literally everybody. I didn't check my spam folder, John. I don't know if you did. Maybe we each got interview invites as well, but it seemed like Penn State tried everybody from Kalani Sitake at BYU to Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I'm sure they tried and kicked the tires on Lane Kiffin till eventually they land on Matt Campbell at Iowa State. And a lot of us felt like this probably should have been your first call to begin with, because a lot of people see this as like a perfect fit and a perfect marriage with Matt Campbell and Penn State football. So my big question though is, right, what qualifies for a good year at Penn State in 2026? You look at all these first year head coaches at their new jobs, and we got from guys like Lane Kiffin, who were expecting you better be in the playoffs this year, to other guys like, I don't know, what is it? Morris
Summerall.
at Summerall, or Morris at Oklahoma State, where it's like, just be respectable. Penn State, I feel like they fall somewhere in the middle of that. Now, fans might have to, like, I don't know, adjust their expectations for a little bit, because the last 3 full seasons under James Franklin, Penn State was right there. Like, they were knocking at the door. They were basically the best of the rest, right? You had the Tier 1, the national championship contenders, and then Penn State was like right there. 3 straight 10-plus win seasons, a New Year's Bowl game in each of those 3 years from 2022 to 2024, a trip to the playoff. I don't think that should be the expectation in 2026. I think you'll get back to that, but I think right now, this season coming in, you should be like, you want to be like, I think right around like that 8-4, 9-3 range going in, just without even looking at their schedule. I think just a blind expectation, you should be right in that range.
Yeah, I think 8-4 is where you start from. 8-4, you are unequivocally happy with how this season went, especially considering how big of a disaster last year was. I mean, like, you had title aspirations. You embarrassed guys like myself who believed in those title aspirations. I mean, things went so off the rails. I don't remember the exact stat, but we lived it, right? Like we were right there when they lost to UCLA and Northwestern back to back as more than 4 touchdown favorites in both of those games. And I think that was like the first time that had ever happened. So, like, epitome of brutality last year. And then you have that coaching search where you are just everyone's leverage stepping stone to get raises at their current schools or to get a better job elsewhere. So it was rough there for a while. It was a real gut check time for Nittany Lion Nation. But I think they ultimately kind of landed with one of the better outcomes that they possibly could have expected, especially considering the context, by bringing in a guy like Matt Campbell, who has done the yeoman's work at a program like Iowa State, which has been a perennial loser for forever, and he really made them a perennial bowl team that had some Big 12 championship appearances. Like, that could be back in the mix for Penn State here in the not too distant future. Is it going to be this year? No. I think there's I understand the move, especially because the timing of things. You lose a bunch of the committed recruiting class. A bunch of them follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech. So, like, you kind of have to just take what you know. You got to take a bunch of guys that you've been coaching at Iowa State and kind of plug them in here in Happy Valley. We'll see how they transition over. I mean, I don't think it'll be like a huge shock to the system for them to move from the Big 12 to the Big 10, but I think 8-4, the quality of coach that Campbell is, plus like the kind of like experience that these guys have across the roster on both sides. You got to like the offensive coordinator. They bring in a new defensive coordinator as well, who's had some experience, I think, out west. I think he was most recently at UCLA and USC, used to play football at Penn State. So pieces are in place here for at least an 8-4 season. That's about a good of like a checking of the boxes you can hope for, I think, for Penn State. If you're a little greedy, maybe 9-3, but 8-4, I think you are nothing but happy with how the season went if you're the Nittany Lion fans.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we'll get to this schedule in a few minutes. It's favorable, I would say, to say the least here, and we'll dive into that in a few minutes. But I love the Matt Campbell hire for Penn State. I mean, you're bringing in the 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, John, as you were alluding to, right? He takes perennial loser Iowa State and makes them a very, very respectable program. He gets Iowa State to double-digit wins, I believe, for the first time in their program history a few years ago. Like, he is 107-70 as a head coach in his career. That's at both Iowa State and Toledo. Just one losing season since 2016. Like, immediately he brings that sense of respectability and where you can pretty much just wipe the memory card of 2025 and just put that in the rearview mirror and not think about it, because Matt Campbell, his teams come to play every single week, right? Like Iowa State was always like a very, very tough out, even for those better Big 12 teams. So I expect Matt Campbell to bring that culture into Penn State, and it seems like he's like literally doing that. As I mentioned to start the show, like, did he just bring the entire city of Ames, Iowa, with him to State College? It feels like he brought 75% of that roster with him. Now, you can look at that in one of two ways. One is, okay, a lot of familiarity there, not that much like for these guys to learn other than just like new surroundings, right? They already know the playbooks and how Campbell is as a coach and all that. Or you can look at it as like, well, this was kind of a middling Iowa State team last year, so what's that going to do going from the Big 12 to the Big 10? But from ESPN, their most recent article here, Matt Campbell always seemed to do more with less at Iowa State. He'll have a full war chest available at Penn State, which finally lured him away from Ames. This is the big nugget, though. The Nittany Lions might be poised for a huge turnaround after signing 39 transfers, including 24 of them who played for Campbell at Iowa State. Rocco Becht at quarterback is the most notable among them. We'll get into those in a few minutes. But just some of the other rankings here, John, where people think after spring ball where Penn State falls. ESPN has them ranked 15th in their way too early top 25 rankings. Bill Connolly has them at, where does he have them? He has them 67th in returning production, but 17th in the initial SP+, 14th on offense, 23rd on defense. Campbell brings in the 55th ranked portal class and the 63rd ranked recruiting class, but he's already doing work for 2027, guys. If you go look at those rankings, they're in the top 5 right now. So Matt Campbell is laying the foundation for the future, where he can work some stuff out with guys that he's very familiar with in 2026. So among those transfer guys, Rocco Becht coming in at quarterback. He is bringing 5 of his top 5 pass catchers, the top 5 receivers from Iowa State last year, which includes a couple of wide receivers, a couple tight ends, the running back too, offensive coordinator coming over as well. So, John, how do you feel about the offense here as we're with spring camp behind us now?
Well, looking at Iowa State last year, like I didn't love their run game, so I think that James Peoples, the transfer from Ohio State, I think is going to be an important part of getting things going.
I think that's a sneaky big transfer.
Yeah, that's a good look there. Do like the tight ends though. For as sort of like dubious as I am on the pass catchers, I mean the pass catchers last year at Penn State were abysmal. It was really rough out there, and like seeing like a Trey Wallace. Just doing what he was doing at Ole Miss, and it's like, really, you couldn't find room for him? Come on, you lose Tyler Warren the year before that, and then you're like, yeah, Trey Wallace, hit the bricks, and then you have again a total disaster season. So they're pretty much starting from scratch as far as this group of pass catchers. I do like Ben Brahmer. I do like Gabe Burkle. We'll see what the offensive line can kind of muster together here as well. But, I think that this will be a functional offense. I don't think it's going to be a particularly fun, appointment viewing type of offense to be watching necessarily, but it's going to do what needs to be done, I think, to put Penn State in position to win a good chunk of its ball games. So again, I think this will look a little bit Iowa State-ish in the sense that, yeah, it's not the most fun thing you've ever watched, but it's a winning recipe. And like you were saying, looking ahead, the interesting thing about the Campbell tenure that we'll get answers to is, what does Campbell look like with resources? Because Iowa State has never been the deepest coffered program out there, and Penn State had given James Franklin, the resources to really kind of get this thing going to where, he's got, top 5, top 10 level recruiting classes every single year. If Campbell can kind of continue that thread, this is going to be pretty interesting pretty quickly here, I think, starting in 2027 when it comes to Penn State.
Yeah, so you mentioned the wide receivers. Wide receiver, I feel like, has been an issue for Penn State for over a decade, right? Since Allen Robinson was there, I feel like wide receiver has just been an issue. And I know Jahan Dotson, right, had some success at Penn State, but it's been rough. And one thing that Matt Campbell's done really well is he's produced NFL talent at the receiver position.
Sure.
I mean, just go look at the Houston Texans depth chart, basically. Because outside of Nico Collins, I think every single wide receiver went to Iowa State. Whether it's Hutchinson, Noel, Higgins, all those guys in Houston were all Iowa State products. And a lot of people are really high on Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel going forward. And Xavier Hutchinson's flashed a little bit too in the NFL. So he brings in a couple wide receivers over as well. The big key for for Penn State going forward, though, this season, right, is replacing that two-headed monster in the backfield in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Now, they didn't quite live up to the expectations last season, but those are still two NFL quality players that the Nittany Lions are trying to replace this year. You bring in the kid from Iowa State. I'm going to butcher his name, Erskinen. But he ran for 950 yards. Or I'm sorry,
Carson Hansen.
Carson Hansen. I'm looking at somebody completely different. Carson Hansen rushed for 952 yards at Iowa State last year. That's a nice little pickup there. Obviously knows this offense. And then James Peoples, as you hinted at, and I said I think is a sneaky huge transfer for them. Averaged 5.5 yards per carry, actually more than that last year with Ohio State before Bo Jackson took over that job. Really, it was a limited role for him. Probably going to have a little more runway, I would say, here at Penn State. Get some more touches here, so I'm really interested to see how that's going to pan out. Now, in the past, I was expecting Julian Fleming to be who flashed at Ohio State to go step in Penn State and ball out, but that didn't happen. So hopefully I'm not eating my words there again. But Rocco Becht is going to be make or break for Penn State this season. 3-year starter at Iowa State with the Cyclones. He goes 26-13. Can he get what do you expect from Rocco Becht here in his presumably one season at State College?
Right. So, I mean, he's been around for a while. Yeah. I mean, 39 games, like you were saying there, never been the greatest guy on accuracy, topped out at just under 63% as far as his completion rate is concerned. But, it hasn't always been a huge turnover guy. You can expect 8-9 interceptions from him. So not awful. He's not a walking turnover that you kind of get concerned about. The touchdowns fell off pretty considerably last year. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel were no longer in Ames. I mean, that we almost saw 10 touchdowns come off the board for him. He can also run a little bit as well, with 8 rushing touchdowns each of the last couple of years. So he's not the biggest guy, but he does, kind of have that craftiness about him to pick up yards when they present themselves to him, and he can find his way, into the end zone as a runner occasionally there when they get into the red zone. So I'm he's a guy that you project out if you're power ranking the Big Ten quarterbacks. He's probably just kind of like that smack dab in the middle. Like he's the Becht line that you sort of like. Does this guy clear that, or does he fall below it when you're looking at the overall Big Ten pecking order for quarterbacks? He's just right there in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I was kind of thinking of something similar too. Like, are you above Becht or below Becht? And he's right in the middle. But once again, though, I wouldn't be surprised to see him have success right away and right from the start of the season, just because there's so much familiarity there. Like, he's bringing his top 5 pass catchers from last season, as I've mentioned, with him. Offensive coordinator coming along too. Like, there's a lot of familiarity there where he should really be able to hit the ground running and could get people a little excited to start the season, I think, at Penn State, if that offense looks a little better than maybe some of us are expecting. I think overall with the offense, and I don't want to like use this as like a slight, because sometimes it can be a good thing. They might just be boring. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like Iowa State, I've always thought of like as a real like kind of pro style offense, right? Where the way they use their tight ends, some years they have some really nice receiving talent out wide there, but like, I think they're going to run the football pretty well with those 2 backs they bring in. Becht just needs to take care of the football and hit the open guy. Like, I'm not expecting anything high flying or crazy out of Penn State. I think they'll just be able to do what's necessary to rack up some wins here in the early part of this season.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, they don't want anything but boring. Like, boring will be a welcome change this year, because last year it was, a train wreck that the entire country was watching, like for several weeks on end there. And, obviously, like, UCLA and Northwestern, maybe like they weren't as bad as we actually thought, but I mean, those losses were, you can't take away how bad you probably felt on those Saturdays if you were a Penn State fan. So something that registers as like that boring, competent, winning brand of football that we've known Campbell can deliver, that would be a welcome change versus like the sort of just kind of crazy, almost like tabloid-esque season that was 2025 in Happy Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting back to winning football, well, the defense is going to have to take a massive step forward and bounce back this season too. As you mentioned, they bring in Danton Lynn as the defensive coordinator after a couple seasons out west. Now he returns to his alma mater here. But John, this defense last year was a massive disappointment. As much as we picked on Drew Aller and the offense when Aller was healthy, like, the defense was just not good and not up to the standard that Penn State has expected the past, 10 to 15 years or so on. They allowed 25 or more points in 6 of 12 regular season games last year. Like, that just cannot happen. And I know they played some big time opponents, but still, like, there was some games where it's like, how are you getting scored on by this team?
I mean, their defense was pretty, I mean, it ranked in FEI like well outside the top 40. Looking at what I call like the neighbors, like who their defensive efficiency was close to last year. You're looking at the Houston Cougars, you're looking at TCU, you're looking at Fresno State was actually a few spots ahead of how Penn State's defense was playing last season. So 43rd overall, like not the worst in the grand scheme of things, but when you shade it to the Power Five, that's got to be close to the bottom. Like you're not Rutgers level where you're pretty much like the worst in the country or anything like that. But for what you're supposed to be, especially at a place like Penn State that has routinely had among the toughest defenses in the country the last decade or so, to drop to that level is something that needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed fast.
So as I was mentioning, as we started to talk about Penn State here, what are the expectations for Matt Campbell in year one at State College? The win total for Penn State in 2026 is 9.5. It's plus 146 to the over at FanDuel. I believe it's somewhere around minus 160 to the under. This is a very favorable schedule, guys, and you're going to see here in a minute as I share my screen and share this schedule with you why the odds makers have Penn State's win total at 9.5 after going 7-6 a year ago. Like, look at this thing immediately, John. What jumps out to me, the big three in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, not on this schedule, okay? You get USC at home, possibly the whiteout game, maybe, in October there. And then you do have a trip to Michigan and a trip to Washington. But, man, this team should be able to rack up wins. Just with everything we know about Matt Campbell and the talent that's on this roster and the continuity from all the guys he brings with him from Ames and from Iowa State, they should be undefeated going into that USC game. I mean, yes, you do have to play on a Friday night against Northwestern on the road in their new stadium, but really revenge should be on the mind for the guys that are left over from last year to get that win there. Wisconsin, we've talked about, is just in the dumps right now. I don't really know how else to put that, but this sets up really nicely. And as we were talking about, like 8-4 should be the floor for Penn State in 2026.
Yeah, I see 8-4 here. I don't see, like, 9-3 is asking them to be blemish free outside of like those tough games. I think there will be at least one, slip up along the way. Like I could see Wisconsin potentially doing it if Colton Joseph is as good as I think he might be, or just somewhere else along this line. Like this isn't a fully ready-made product as much as you may want to think it is, just because Campbell is such a known commodity and they bring over so many of his former players as well. But I think there's probably going to be at least some semblance of a growing pains here at some point this season outside of those games that, again, we're kind of expecting Penn State to be underdogs in probably just 3 of those games. And then I think they drop one more of those. 8-4, again, like we started at the top of this deep dive. I think you're totally happy with how things went in year one under Campbell if you end up 8-4.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on how you look at 8-4 too. If it's like, well, they're 8-2 and then they drop a game to Rutgers or Maryland, something like that, or both those games, or if they let just games slip away late. It's going to depend on how it looks at 8-4, but they should be right in that 8-9 win range, and that's why you see their win total up to 9.5 on some spots. Now, if you are feeling very optimistic about Penn State and Matt Campbell, and you look at this schedule and you say 8-4, 9-3, screw that. This team could be even better, right? If they pop USC at home, we know Lincoln Riley struggles when he leaves the Western time zone with USC, right? Could they go into Michigan and get a win, or go out to Washington and pick up a win? We talked about this a few weeks ago, John, right? 22-1 to win the Big Ten, I don't think is the craziest future ticket that you could put some money on, sprinkle some pizza money on going into the season. Just looking at this schedule, if Matt Campbell gets this ship pointed in the right direction right away, like Penn State could somehow find their way to Indianapolis, where all these other teams and these teams that are projected to finish ahead of them have much tougher schedules and could slip up. And just like looking at the standings, well, Penn State somehow went 7-1 in conference play.
See, I mean, crazy things can happen in the Big Ten. I feel like the Big Ten, because it's so big, and we've seen it in recent years where teams can kind of avoid that really brutal draw. Like that, some teams are going to have a gauntlet, and some teams can handle their gauntlet. I don't think that if Penn State had a tough schedule that it would go particularly well for them this season. But that's why the odds makers are putting them at what, 8.5 as their over/under win total, coming off of a disaster season, because they do dodge those big bullies in the Big Ten. So if it does, best case scenario here, I think the 10 wins is not completely impossible. Am I expecting it? No, but like you're saying, if you're talking about a pizza money bet at 22-1, crazier things have happened. Crazy things happened just last year. Like Indiana was expected to fall right back to where they used to be. Their odds before the season for either the Big Ten championship or the national championship were astronomical. So anything can happen, of course. I'm gonna just continue to be like I'm gonna reflect the boringness of this Penn State team. I'm just gonna say they're a nice little 8-4 team that is pointed in the right direction going into 27.
Fair enough. All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about some quarterback battles here, one in particular. But before we do, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you are watching, guys. Thank you very much if you are, as we continue to grow the show here throughout the off season. And do us a favor, like the video. That goes a long way as we continue to try to build this thing. So speaking of building, rebuilding might be the way to put this, or I don't even know how to categorize where Florida State is as a football program right now. Are they building? Are they rebuilding? Retooling? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if Mike Norvell knows. All he knows is that the check is still clearing at this point. But the Noles have named their starting quarterback for 2026. Not really much of a surprise. Ashton Daniels, who is still in school, He now has a residency in Tallahassee, Florida, and he will become the latest in the transfer portal quarterback legacy lineage that includes DJ Uiagalelei, and Tommy Castellanos, who changed his name when he went from BC to Florida State, from Thomas Castellanos to Tommy. But
Yeah.
anyways, Ashton Daniels is now going to be the starting quarterback here. John, 5-18 as a starter at Stanford and Auburn. I mean, if you go on the message boards, Seminoles fans not feeling too good about this.
I wouldn't either. I take this as like a short-term dealio, and you hope that someone else on that depth chart might be able to be ready whenever Daniels probably invariably gets benched, because he's been a turnover machine. You look at his time at Stanford, almost as many picks as touchdowns. There weren't that many touchdowns either to kind of offset it. If anything, like the one sort of like trump card was he was pretty good as a runner, especially in his last year at Stanford, running for almost 700 yards to go with 3 touchdowns. Didn't really get, Auburn didn't really know what it was doing last year. It had, Daniels, it had Jackson Arnold. I mean, it had like this whole carousel of clowns as their quarterbacks last year. So we don't really know what Daniels could have been with Hugh Freeze's offense, but I don't know. I mean, I understand where Florida State's coming from and like taking someone that has some experience to be your quarterback, but it does feel like they did not exactly have their pick of the litter when it came to transfer quarterbacks. And again, a reflection of where Florida State is right now, where a couple of years ago it'd be like, oh yeah, they can get almost anybody they want, they're a destination. All of a sudden it's sort of like a wow, a lot of other things have totally kind of backfired on me. Is Florida State still on the phone here to talk about it? I do like their backfield. I do like Deuce Robinson. Those are the only 2 good things I can say about Florida State's roster right now. I think picking up Quinn Wisner out of Texas was a good move for them. And Usman Kroma, I thought, was one of the better freshman running backs in the country last season. But Florida State never has a good offensive line, so we'll see how much they can actually get out of that. But Daniels, ultimately, not a needle mover to me, and I would take the under on him starting more than 8 games next year.
Yeah, I mean, when you have your fan base, and I've just reading through the comments, like whining and complaining that the redshirt junior from a JUCO that transferred in should have gotten more, more of a chance. That's just the kind of situation you don't want to be in as a program, but that is where Florida State finds itself right now. A nice thing I think I can say about them, the defense did start to play really well and click towards the end of the season, and they were a younger group. So maybe that comes in here where Florida State can keep these games low scoring, and then maybe Daniels can create with his legs, and that's how they win some games here. But yeah, it's tough times in Tallahassee with how things are going right now.
I think just looking at this team, looking at the depth chart and looking at who's like even played a little bit, I think there's some like good like weird fan moment potential if Kevin Sperry gets into some games. Like all the students, like like the Doak is totally emptied out, but like the fraternity students, like they all got their Sperrys in their hands and they're waving them around, something like that. They're all hammered and sunburned. Like I want to see something like that at the end of like a tough like blowout loss for Florida State sometime at the end of September. I think that would give some heartening moments, sort of akin to like, was it Oklahoma State last year where the guys would just get shirtless just because everything else was going horribly wrong? Yeah. So Sperry Nation at Florida State, I want to see that at some point.
Yeah, put a pin in that. You might have been the one to start that. You might have to take a trip down there and just rent it. You could probably get an entire section at the Doak, I'm sure, some of these games by yourself, and just go up there and start it with your Sperry's in hand.
I still got some real like bar tar Sperry's around here somewhere, so that they'll be ready to go.
There you go. Very good. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the NFL draft. We are, I don't know, like 30 hours away from the Raiders officially going on the clock and taking Fernando Mendoza with that number 1 overall pick. There's been some interesting movement, obviously, as the more like the final little bits of reporting and articles and intel come out here. We got the last couple of mock drafts coming out from guys like Todd McShay and Peter Schrager dropping this morning. The big question Well, there's a couple big questions, I think, going into this draft. And let's just start with Ty Simpson, who we've talked about a lot this offseason. Does he go in the first round? Where does he go? Who takes him? I mean, he's been an interesting kind of prospect here. He is minus 250 right now on DraftKings to go in the first round. It seems like a lot of people think that someone's going to trade back up into the bottom couple of picks on Thursday night and take him. I think just from a historical standpoint, he's probably going to end up going Thursday night, John, just because outside of the Kenny Pickett draft, every single NFL draft since 2013, we've seen at least 2 quarterbacks go in the first round. And dating all the way back to 2002, we've had at least 2 quarterbacks go in the first round in like 22 of the last 24 drafts, or whatever that math comes out to be. There was only 2 drafts that we did not see that. So I think just from a historical standpoint and how the draft night normally works, someone's going to move back up and take them. It could be a team like the Arizona Cardinals. Adam Schefter did drop a little bit of intel here in his latest column on Tuesday, and I'll just read from Shefty. The 2 teams that seem to be the most interested in Simpson are the Jets and Cardinals. The Jets hold the 16th pick in the middle of round 1 and the 33rd pick at the top of round 2. The Cardinals hold number 34 in round 2, right behind the Jets. If Arizona wants to leapfrog New York, it could not only land Simpson, but also get that 5th-year option on his rookie contract by taking him in round 1. Obviously with Schefter, very well plugged in and connected, where I feel like we are going to see this trade, and we're going to see this happen Thursday night.
Yeah, and you know, this is a pretty common playbook. We see this. You know, we don't have to look that far back. Last year with Jackson Dart, you know, Giants moved back up into the first round to draft him at the 27th pick. So there's precedent here. We know exactly what it's probably going to cost either the Cardinals or the Jets to move up to make this happen. Do I think this is the best idea? No, because I think when you're taking someone in the first round, you're kind of tethering yourself to them as your quarterback of the future. Do you really want to do that with the guy that you're taking that 25 plus teams have passed on? No, I feel like there's some signal there. So the 5th year options. Do you want a 5th year? Are you sure that you're going to want a 5th year of Ty Simpson? I'm just not so sure. So I think in an ideal world, if I'm the Jets, yeah, I'm taking Ty Simpson with the first pick of the second round. And I'm hopefully not having to move up back into the first round, because teams are going to kind of hold you over the coals a little bit. It's I'm giving you my first round pick, so you're going to have to give me some more, maybe more draft capital than you would like. So ultimately, Dan, like you're saying, the odds are telling us something here. The reporters are telling us something here. It's likely that Simpson goes in the first round. I just don't think it's going to be a good idea for either the Jets or the Cardinals if it plays out that way. I'd be much more comfortable with them, if I'm a fan of either of those teams, taking Simpson in the second round, being okay, there's an open competition between them and the veteran, but we're not completely out of the race for a quarterback next year if things really go poorly this year, because I know it's always a bill of goods, next year's quarterback class is better than this past year's, and that sometimes that's not true. I probably would have been saying that about this year's class a year ago right now, but I'm pretty sure that next year's draft class is going to be a lot more interesting at the quarterback spot. I'm not bending over backwards to get the top of the second tier of this particular crop, which is apparently Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, Simpson's just not, as a prospect, just not somebody that I love, for quite a few reasons. I don't really like the size with Ty Simpson. I'm a sizist when it comes to my quarterback. I want my quarterback, to be at least 6'3". I think Simpson's 6'1", 6'2" tops. I never really loved him at Alabama. So he's just not a guy that I would, cash my chips in. And especially if I'm a team either the Jets or the Cardinals, I mean, you think of those 2 teams that we're talking about here, don't exactly have the best history and track record when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. And I don't think Ty Simpson is the guy to be the latest on that list to move up for. I mean, just look at the last couple of quarterbacks that the Cardinals have drafted, right? Kyler turned out to be, I don't want to say a disaster, but not great, right?
The second contract was bad.
Yeah, I mean, more interested in playing video games than looking at his playbook. And then right before the year before, they took the Trojan one. Josh Rosen So like,
Right. And that's a disaster. Like you're already moved on from your pick that you spent like the 10th overall pick on in
yeah.
2018. That's a disaster.
And then the Jets, I mean, where do you even begin with everything that they've done at the quarterback position?
Well,
So
they're good identifiers of talent. You know, they did draft Super Bowl champion Sam Darnold.
that's
Did,
true.
did,
That
did he
is
win the
true.
Super Bowl for them? No, but they did draft him.
And now all of a sudden, Geno Smith is back. But anyways, so Ty Simpson's draft prop for Thursday night is sitting there at 24.5. But since we're talking about the Jets, John, the number 2 pick has just like, it is, if you go, like, just go check the odds market, guys, for the number 2 pick, like every couple of hours, it's going to flip flop. Like everybody is all over the place, whether it's Arvell Reese or David Bailey. Who are the Jets going to take there? This is where the draft really begins Thursday night. I was looking this morning around 10 a.m., 10:30. David Bailey was the odds-on favorite, sitting at like minus 160 or something like that. And now let's just take a look at DraftKings as I go over there. It's Arvell Reese is the favorite at minus 145. We've had multiple mocks this morning, all in different directions. Guys saying that they are convicted that this is the way they are going. Like Graziano, basically, right? Dan Graziano from ESPN puts out an article a couple of hours ago saying that, well, because the Jets canceled their visit, their top 30 visit with Bailey last week, that makes him feel very strongly that they're going to take Arvell Reese. And then I don't know if you've seen the clip of David Bailey talking at one of his workouts, and he gets the Jets GM's name wrong, where he's trying to talk about the Jets, but he's using the name of the Cardinals GM. So there is just a lot going on there. I guess right now at 1:51 p.m. on Wednesday, April 23rd, I'm going to say Arvell Reese is going second overall.
Yeah, it seems to be going that way again. By 1:51 on Thursday, it could be different yet again, but I think that Reese is probably like the more developmental, like higher upside, toolsier guy than Bailey is. But Bailey, the much more productive player in college. I've been over this before. You know what is really kind of capturing the Jets' eye. We will see. I think that what it's looking for will determine that. They are going between one of those two players. I think we can be pretty sure of that. And at this stage here, this late in the phase, hopefully we're not falling for yet another smokescreen here. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be Arvell Reese there.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. Another interesting thing that seems to be kind of percolating and popping up is that Jeremiah Love might go third overall. This is getting interesting. So at first, earlier this week, I was listening to Joel Klatt and his latest mock draft. He had the Cardinals take him at number 3. I was like, okay, Joel's just trying to be a little different here. But now we've seen some reporting coming out, most notably from Adam Schefter and Dan Graziano over at ESPN, that, well, obviously we know that the Cardinals are trying to trade out of that pick, where someone might be trying to jump the Titans to get their hands on Jeremiah Love. But also, both Schefter and Graziano say if the Cardinals don't get an offer to their liking, they would be very comfortable taking Jeremiah Love at 3rd overall. So I do think that's interesting. If you're feeling that way too, I think you can still get him at like plus 250 to go 3rd overall right now. So that'd be a nice little play, a nice little payout for you too, where maybe one of those edge guys drops a few picks and then Love goes in the top 3 picks.
Yeah, I mean, this rumor, it's sort of like this is why bad teams stay bad. Again, like we both know that Jeremiah Love's an awesome player, but I think we both also know the Cardinals need a lot more than just a running back right now. And what I've kind of noticed from the commentary on, the Cardinals are in on Jeremiah Love, it's all like drubbing up like fake excitement and like getting butts in the seats in Arizona, which they do need to do. I understand that, but I mean, come on, like this is not the right pick. Like if you want like long-term success, like you need to fix more than just your backfield, which you already kind of fixed, in my opinion, this offseason by bringing in Tyler Algier. Like, if you trade back, a la what they did a couple years ago with the Texans, where they still were able to get Paris Johnson, who they needed. Like, that's a good move. That's a good move for Arizona. Standing pat at 3, taking Jeremiah Love when you have this much else to fix, I think would end up being, not like a colossal monumental error, but one that ultimately doesn't really get the most out of either Jeremiah Love and it doesn't, move the Cardinals forward quite enough to really end up, being a successful pick overall. So I'm hoping. I want to root for Jeremiah Love. I want to see him do really well, and I know that saying go to the Titans is rich, but it would be better for him than the Cardinals, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Another interesting little angle here that I'm looking at. How many wide receivers come off the board Thursday night? I think this is interesting here. And in what order, too, because Jordan Tyson's stock has skyrocketed.
That's been crazy.
The last week or so. I'm feeling very good about my wide receiver rankings from about a month ago when we did them, how Jordan Tyson has exploded up the boards here with that stock rising. But we know there's a big three of the wide receivers here this year, right? In Tyson, Carnell Tate, Malachi Lemon, and then we get to that next tier. But DraftKings has us at 5.5 for first-round wide receivers, minus 165 to the over, so pretty juiced there. The under at plus 125. But just look at some of these position props here. Omar Cooper out of Indiana, 23.5. KC Concepcion from A&M at 24.5. Denzel Boston from Washington at 26.5. And then we could even see a Chris Brazell from Tennessee sneak in too. So we could get 7 wide receivers in the first round here. How are you feeling about these guys? Do you think we see a lot of receivers come off the board on Thursday?
I think we're going to go under 5.5. So I'm of the opinion that big three goes, and I'm kind of on a coin flip as to whether Omar Cooper actually ends up, because I know he has really staunch proponents, but I also am just a little bit concerned enough with the fact that it took him until his senior year of college to catch more than 28 passes in a season.
Sure.
Breakout stuff like that does kind of matter, and it does kind of predict future success in the NFL. So I wonder if teams are going to be a little bit leery of Cooper, and maybe he ends up being more of a day 2 guy after all. I do think Concepcion has a pretty strong case of being a first rounder. I think that he's someone that would make sense inside the top 25, but I think it'll be him. I think it'll be Tate, Lemon, and Tyson are your 4 that I'm the strongest on here as far as the receivers going in the first round. I like the receivers that are going to go on day 2. Brazell's a fun player, but we'll see if he can kind of stomp out the Tennessee receiver curse that has kind of plagued them under Heupel. I like Ted Hurst out of Georgia State a fair bit. Of course, still like my guy Zach Branch, even though he's getting arrested.
Where's he going to be?
I feel like the police. What's his face? Greg Rosenthal had a great tweet on Sunday, after the police report came out, where it's this is the first police report that actually helps a player's draft stock. It was just so obviously the Athens police just overreaching and just wanting to get a famous guy, but he got out on a $39 bond or what have you. So I think that Branch is still a late day 2 type of guy, but I still like him enough as well. And I like the other Indiana guy, Elijah Surratt, a fair bit as well. So that I'm excited for these day 2 receivers. The day 1 ones right now, I think we're going to see just 4 off the board.
Fair enough. And then when it comes to who goes first in this wide receiver class, Mel Kiper now has Tyson above Tate. So if you're feeling that way too, and you believe what Mel's got going on, I think it's plus 130 at this point for Jordan Tyson to be the first wide receiver take. And you did miss a much better price from a few weeks ago. But Jordan Tyson has just pretty much just murdered his workouts, and teams are all over him, and he might be a top 10 pick on Thursday night.
It's been crazy. A week ago, there was, is he going to be in the first round even? Is he going to be third among these guys? Now Kiper and you said, Daniel Jeremiah, who I think was kind of the leader of something might be wrong here with Jordan Tyson. Even on a podcast this morning said that he expects Tyson to be the first receiver off the board.
And then one other little note that I think is interesting here as I was picking my way through the Schefter column the other day. I don't know much about cornerback Traden Stukes from Arizona, but Shefty does have this. Arizona cornerback Traden Stukes seems to be climbing on some draft boards. He's been busy traveling in recent weeks with 11 top 30 visits, including Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Seattle. He had 4 interceptions last season, ran a 4.33 40 at the combine. Teams say they think he can play both safety positions, nickel corner and outside corner. And one NFL GM called Stukes, quote, one of the best safeties I've seen in my time as a GM, added he would draft him ahead of Caleb Downs. This guy makes freaky plays that I haven't seen other safeties make. It would not be a shock to see Stukes sneak into round 1. Now, that could just be a giant smoke screen. It could be doing a favor for another team with Schefter there or an agent or something like that. But if you buy in on that, you got a 4-1 ticket sitting out there on DK right now if you think Stukes somehow sneaks his way into the first round on Thursday night.
I could see it also because, I think like the defensive back class, like it's ripe for the picking a little bit, and I think with McCoy from Tennessee, the mounting questions about his knee, I'd never heard the word bone plug before, or having to get one replaced. So that
doesn't sound good.
No, it sounds like a big ouchie in one's knee. I know that he was able to run it at Tennessee's pro day, but like that seems like a problem waiting to happen. So like he could fall. Obviously that could mean that his teammate rises up, but I think it also opens the door for someone like a Stukes to come in here. I think Chris Johnson's another name to look at as someone who sort of like is benefited by the fall of McCoy a little bit here and as early as Thursday night.
Yeah, it's really like, what's that position run going to be at the end of the night tomorrow night on Thursday night? Is it going to be offensive linemen? Is it going to be wide receivers? Is it going to be corners? Like normally at the end of the draft, like we start to see that run where we might bleed into Friday night. Typically, I feel like it's usually like receivers or something or linemen. It could very well be that way again, but we'll see. It could be defensive backs this time around. But before we wrap up, John, I know you have a couple of other plays on your card for draft bets. What do you got?
Yeah, so I just wanted to look at the market for, is this guy going to be a first rounder or not?
Sure.
Guys that with reasonable odds, one way or the other. Like we're not going to pay super heavy juice to say that Fernando Mendoza is going to be a first round pick, but guys that are reasonable bets to make it at reasonable prices. I think Avion Terrell out of Clemson, he's another guy. Talking about the sort of cornerback upheaval here as we get close to the draft. I think there's a chance that he ends up being selected at the end of the first round. A little bit undersized, but like a really kind of like natural gift type of corner. We've seen Clemson churn out guys like him before. Obviously, his brother on top of that as well. So Terrell is someone I'm taking a look at. Jacob Rodriguez, I think that he could get drafted ahead of C.J. Allen out of Georgia and be like the second off-ball linebacker taken on Thursday night. And Emmanuel Pregnon, he's just a massive guy, and he's plus 450 out of Oregon. I feel like there's going to be some desire for guard at the end of the first round. I think that tends to be a sweet spot for guard. I mean, you're talking about a guy who may rate as a second or third best one, still available late in the first round. One of those teams that's drafting in that range, I think, is going to be pretty interested at taking a look at him. So plus 450, I really think is really not a bad price whatsoever for someone that I think could go in the top 3 of his relative position. Someone that from pick 25 to pick 32 tomorrow night, I think very good chance we hear his name.
Yeah, those are definitely interesting looks. Some of the other guys I kind of like in that range too, like a Cassius Howell out of A&M, the edge player, or a Zion Young is also plus money to go in the first round. And then another one that's interesting too, Jadarian Price at plus 370. The Seahawks are sitting there at 32. John Schneider has pretty much come out and said, we want to move out of this pick. But if they do have to make a selection on Thursday night and they just don't get an offer that they like, what are the two big players that they're trying to replace, right? Kenneth Walker at running back and Boy Mafe off the edge. So I feel like Seattle's going to go in one of those two directions. And we did see, I saw there was a report that they really do like Jadarian Price. So we'll see if that comes out. But you got him at like plus 375 to go in the first round tomorrow night, which could be an interesting way to cap off that night.
The only like pushback I have on that, because he makes a lot of sense for the Seahawks, is that he doesn't make a lot of sense for anyone else in the first round. It is like that. That's like you're walking a pretty tightrope there. But I mean, I think he would make sense, especially because Charbonnet he tore that knee up pretty bad and pretty late, And you bring in Emmanuel Wilson, who was good in relief of Josh Jacobs last year, and George Holani is okay. But the Seahawks definitely want more, and they definitely probably want to come out of this draft with one of the few truly projectable running backs from this class. It's not a great class, but I think Price definitely qualifies as one of the better, potential options. Maybe they wait around a little bit for guys like Emmett Johnson or Nick Singleton, but I wouldn't say it's the worst move for the defending Super Bowl champions to stock up at running back. Like, it's always like the luxury pick in the first round. Well, more of a luxury pick than you have than picking 32nd.
Yeah, and I just looked to first position selected by Seahawks, running back plus 330 might be a better way to go with that too, where let's say they bump back to 35, 36, and then they take Price there. Could be an interesting way to look at that. But I think that's going to do it for us this week. Enjoy the NFL draft, guys, and we will talk to you soon. For John, I'm Dan. This is College Football Tailgate. Hit that subscribe button, and thank you very much for watching and listening.